The sleek titanium briefcase clicked open precisely at 3:42 p.m. inside a crowded Manhattan banking lobby, revealing a wire transfer contract worth exactly $2.3 million. Dr. Amara Williams, the chief executive officer of a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise, stood perfectly still in her custom-tailored navy wool suit as a senior teller slid her black Centurion card right back across the polished marble counter. The young employee, whose name tag read Brad Thompson, did not bother checking the secure database or validating the high-tier corporate credentials. Instead, he simply smirked, adjusted his tie, and stated loudly enough for the entire line to hear that this specific financial instrument looked completely fraudulent and that they simply did not serve her type of customer at this flagship location. Within seconds, the atmosphere inside the historical financial hall shifted from standard afternoon business to an absolute standstill as surrounding customers stopped filling out their deposit slips and pulled out their mobile devices to record the unfolding scene. A woman standing just 2 feet away, Maria Santos, quickly opened her social media application and initiated a live broadcast capturing the raw tension as the digital viewer count instantly began to climb from dozens to hundreds of people watching the public humiliation in real time. Dr. Williams did not raise her voice, nor did she exhibit a single outward sign of agitation. Instead, she checked her limited edition Patek Philippe wristwatch, noting with extreme precision that she had exactly 47 minutes remaining before the strict contractual deadline for her company's newest technology acquisition would expire completely. If the $2.3 million did not land in the seller's escrow account by 4:30 p.m. sharp, the entire $200 million corporate merger would completely fall apart, wiping out months of intense cross-border legal negotiations and jeopardizing over 500 projected new jobs. Brad Thompson, entirely unaware that the woman standing across from him commanded an international firm generating over $4.2 billion in annual revenue, dismissively waved his hand and called for the next customer in line to step forward. The blatant display of corporate bias hung heavily in the air as branch manager Susan Chen emerged from a back executive office, alerted by the growing murmur of the crowd and the unmistakable red recording lights of multiple smartphones pointed directly at her primary teller station. Instead of de-escalating the problem or reviewing the verified account balances, Susan Chen glanced at Dr. Williams, reviewed the extensive corporate paperwork with a superficial and highly critical eye, and coldly announced that the institution maintained strict internal security protocols regarding highly unusual transactions from specific demographics. Maria's live stream broadcast exploded with furious comments from viewers across the country as the phrase "demographic" echoed through the marble lobby, cementing a digital paper trail of institutional profiling that was now accelerating across multiple online platforms at an unstoppable velocity. Dr. Williams quietly retrieved her secondary encrypted mobile device from her jacket pocket, bypassed the standard administrative channels, and directly dialed the secure emergency line of her chief legal officer, instructing her to activate the corporate code red protocol at the 47th Street branch immediately. With 38 minutes left on the contractual clock and the startup sellers threatening to walk away from the negotiation table, a massive legal and financial storm was converging on this single banking location, driven by an elite executive who refused to let individual prejudice dismantle her life's work. The corporate gears of Williams and Associates shifted into high gear 47 floors above the bustling city streets, as Chief Legal Officer Patricia Morrison received the emergency transmission. A brilliant Harvard Law graduate and former elite federal prosecutor, Patricia did not require a lengthy explanation. She understood instantly that her chief executive officer was facing an egregious public violation of their pre-negotiated master banking agreement. Within 90 seconds, 6 senior legal associates and 3 dedicated paralegals mobilized inside the primary corporate war room, rapidly pulling up the encrypted digital repositories containing First National Bank's global compliance contracts and explicit anti-discrimination riders. Down in the physical lobby, the regional manager Derek Walsh arrived completely out of breath after rushing down from his private upper-level suite, having been alerted by corporate communications that their brand name was suddenly trending negatively on major social platforms. Derek Walsh, a 25-year veteran of traditional high-net-worth banking, approached the scene with a mask of corporate friendliness, attempting to smoothly guide Dr. Williams away from the public eye and into a private side office where the legal exposure could be easily concealed. Dr. Williams stood her ground firmly on the public marble floor, refusing to grant the institution the luxury of privacy, while her professional reputation and her company's critical transaction were being openly questioned. Stephen Rodriguez, an experienced civil rights attorney who happened to be waiting in the standard teller line to deposit a personal check, stepped forward out of the crowd and officially announced that he was legally documenting the entire interaction as an active witness to a clear public accommodation violation. The crowd of onlookers grew larger by the minute, filling the open lobby as local news producer Sarah Kim recognized the immense cultural and social gravity of the unfolding event and immediately contacted her network's central assignment desk to dispatch an emergency live broadcast crew to the scene. Meanwhile, Maria's digital livestream crossed the 15,000 concurrent viewer milestone, and a short snippet of Brad Thompson's dismissive remarks was uploaded to a viral video platform, generating over 45,000 views in less than 2 minutes. Jennifer Park, the personal executive assistant to Dr. Williams, arrived at the branch after sprinting 6 full blocks through heavy midtown traffic, carrying a secure leather portfolio containing the finalized, fully executed acquisition deeds that required immediate funding verification. The clock now showed exactly 28 minutes remaining before the startup's strict expiration clause would automatically execute, giving the opposing counsel full legal authority to terminate the deal and retain the initial multi-million-dollar corporate deposits. Derek Walsh finally took the confidential banking relationship document that Dr. Williams extended toward him, and as his eyes scanned the private account codes and institutional tier classifications, the color completely drained from his face. The official document clearly proved that Williams and Associates did not merely hold a standard commercial account. They maintained a massive, highly structured $847 million liquidity portfolio, with the bank generating over $23 million in direct transactional fees every single fiscal year. Susan Chen, still desperate to defend her branch's initial discriminatory actions, tried to interrupt her superior by claiming that corporate policy regarding unverified funds must be strictly upheld regardless of the client's alleged net worth. Dr. Williams cut through the manager's defensive statement with absolute calm, instructing Patricia Morrison via speakerphone to read Section 4.22 of their master banking agreement loud enough for the entire room and the active recording devices to capture clearly. Patricia's authoritative legal voice boomed through the phone line, clarifying that any documented instance of racial bias or arbitrary service denial by bank staff would trigger an immediate contract breach, allowing Williams and Associates to instantly terminate the relationship and demand $5 million in immediate liquidated damages per individual infraction. The absolute silence that followed was deafening, as Derek Walsh realized that his junior teller's personal prejudice had just triggered a catastrophic, multi-million-dollar operational liability for the entire national banking corporation. Realizing that the entire legal framework of the bank was crumbling in real time, Walsh frantically ordered a secondary senior teller, Maria Gonzalez, to immediately bypass Brad Thompson's terminal and manually initiate the $2.3 million wire transfer through the secure Federal Reserve routing network. With only 16 minutes remaining before the absolute collapse of the technology acquisition, Maria Gonzalez worked with extreme efficiency, validating the corporate security tokens, verifying the biometric overrides, and successfully transmitting the funds to the escrow destination. Jennifer Park monitored her secure tablet with intense focus, and at exactly 4:18 p.m., she officially confirmed that the startup sellers had received the wire transfer, saving the $200 million deal with less than 12 minutes to spare. Although the primary commercial transaction was safely secured, Dr. Williams made it absolutely clear to the trembling regional manager that the public humiliation she experienced would not be settled by a simple delayed wire transfer. She coldly delivered 3 non-negotiable mandates that required immediate corporate execution, a full, unedited public apology broadcast across all official media channels, the immediate termination of the biased staff members, and a mandatory comprehensive bias training program implemented across all national branches under independent external oversight. Patricia Morrison immediately handed Derek Walsh a set of pre-prepared corporate account termination documents, explicitly stating that if all 3 mandates were not fully executed within a strict 24-hour window, Williams and Associates would legally withdraw every single cent of their $847 million and transfer it directly to their primary global competitor by 5:45 p.m. The scene of the corporate confrontation shifted directly to the 32nd floor of the First National Bank corporate tower, where Bank President Margaret Foster sat at the head of a massive mahogany conference table. A seasoned Wharton graduate who had successfully navigated historic financial crises and hostile corporate takeovers. Margaret Foster was currently looking at a digital dashboard that indicated their corporate stock was beginning to experience heavy volatility in after-hours trading due to the massive viral reach of the live stream video. The corporate communications team informed her that the hashtag associated with the branch incident was officially trending #1 nationally, with major financial news networks picking up the story for their evening broadcast segments. When Dr. Amara Williams entered the executive boardroom flanked by her elite legal entourage, the traditional power dynamic of the financial institution was completely inverted. The bank was now completely at the mercy of the client they had marginalized just 2 hours prior. Chief Financial Officer David Park presented a real-time risk assessment to the board, revealing that the immediate loss of the Williams portfolio would result in a multi-million-dollar drop in annual revenue and could potentially trigger a 3 to 5% decline in overall market capitalization, representing an overnight loss of nearly $200 million in shareholder value. The bank's chief legal counsel, Rebecca Martinez, quietly advised President Foster that their legal position was completely indefensible due to the flawless multi-angle video evidence captured by the public onlookers and the explicit anti-discrimination clauses embedded in the corporate contract. Dr. Williams leaned forward across the table, her steady gaze holding the bank president completely accountable as she expanded her demands to include a historic $50 million financial commitment to a community development fund designed to provide capital to minority entrepreneurs who had been historically denied access to traditional banking services. Recognizing that any hesitation would result in the total destruction of the bank's public reputation and a massive exodus of institutional depositors, Margaret Foster accepted every single non-negotiable term with absolute corporate finality, signing the binding legal addendums prepared by Patricia Morrison. Down in the main lobby, security guard Mike Rodriguez officially escorted a visibly shaken Brad Thompson out of the building, forcing him to carry his personal belongings in a plain cardboard box past the remaining customers, while the local news crews captured his departure on high-definition cameras. Susan Chen was placed on immediate, indefinite suspension without pay, pending a full internal human resources investigation, while Regional Manager Derek Walsh received a permanent formal written reprimand in his corporate file and was stripped of his autonomous branch oversight privileges. Promptly at 6:15 p.m., less than 3 hours after the initial incident occurred, First National Bank released a professionally produced unedited video statement across all digital and broadcast networks, featuring President Margaret Foster delivering a direct, unconditional public apology to Dr. Amara Williams. The unprecedented corporate capitulation sent shockwaves through the financial sector, serving as a historic case study in how individual prejudice could instantly transform into an immense corporate liability when met with strategic, unyielding economic power. Over the next 3 weeks, the bank officially contracted Diversity Solutions Incorporated, a premier independent compliance firm, to design and execute a mandatory 40-hour cultural competency and unconscious bias training curriculum for all 15,000 employees across their entire branch network. To ensure long-term systemic accountability, the bank developed a specialized encrypted mobile application and a dedicated 24-hour hotline that allowed everyday consumers to instantly report instances of disparate treatment directly to an independent third-party monitoring panel. The newly established Dignity Banking Initiative quickly deployed the $50 million in community development funding, establishing robust small business loan programs, specialized home ownership pathways, and academic scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing advanced degrees in finance and executive management. The Williams and Associates Foundation assumed full administrative control over the allocation process, ensuring that the capital was distributed directly to highly qualified minority entrepreneurs who had been previously overlooked by traditional lending algorithms. The very first financial recipient was Marcus Johnson, an honorable African-American military veteran whose applications for a commercial automotive expansion loan had been repeatedly rejected by multiple local banks over a 3-year period. Under the new initiative, his comprehensive business model was reviewed with absolute objectivity, resulting in a full $200,000 capital approval within 36 hours, allowing him to immediately double his operational facility and hire 18 new full-time employees from the local community. 6 months after that fateful Tuesday afternoon, the measurable data completely vindicated Dr. Williams' strategic refusal to accept public humiliation, silently demonstrating that true institutional reform is driven by economic leverage and structural accountability. Official compliance audits revealed that verified customer discrimination complaints across all First National branches had plummeted by an astonishing 87%, while overall, minority employee retention and internal promotion satisfaction metrics increased by more than 34%. Furthermore, the bank's public commitment to absolute operational transparency attracted a massive wave of new consumer and commercial accounts from diverse communities, generating over $120 million in new organic deposits that completely offset the initial implementation costs. Recognizing the profound institutional turnaround, Williams and Associates officially expanded their active financial relationship with the bank, increasing their total deposit and investment portfolio to a historic $1.2 billion across multiple commercial and international trading sectors. The American Banking Association officially updated its national operational guidelines based on the structural reforms pioneered during the crisis, rendering independent third-party bias, monitoring a standard industry benchmark for commercial institutions nationwide. Harvard Business School formally published a comprehensive case study titled Williams versus First National Bank, which was rapidly integrated into the core curriculum of 47 top-tier Master of Business Administration programs, as required reading for corporate ethics and strategic crisis management. Dr. Amara Williams was invited to deliver the keynote address at the Federal Reserve's annual Diversity and Inclusion Summit, where she stood before hundreds of global financial executives and explicitly stated that human dignity was an absolute prerequisite for sustainable economic growth. Maria Santos successfully leveraged her viral broadcast fame to launch a highly successful corporate accountability consulting firm, helping everyday workers document and dismantle systemic bias in traditional corporate environments. The technology startup acquisition that had triggered the initial high-stakes confrontation succeeded far beyond original market projections, creating over 800 stable new jobs with a documented 68% minority hiring rate across all engineering and administrative divisions. Dr. Williams' quiet, calculated, and entirely non-violent deployment of corporate power proved permanently that when structural courage aligns perfectly with precise economic strategy, individual prejudice can be successfully transformed into absolute institutional justice, the historical validation of Dr. Amara Williams's economic strategy began to manifest gray hairs on the heads of traditional Wall Street executives who had long ignored the financial power of minority-owned conglomerates. 9 months following the Manhattan branch confrontation, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors officially requested Dr. Williams to join an elite oversight committee tasked with restructuring national fair lending guidelines. This appointment was not a mere performative gesture. It gave Williams and Associates direct access to the internal compliance metrics of the top 25 banking institutions in North America. Meanwhile, inside the corporate offices of First National Bank, the newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Elena Vance, was uncovering decades of hidden data showing that thousands of high-net-worth minority business owners had routinely abandoned the bank due to subtle, unwritten institutional barriers. Dr. Vance's quarterly report was delivered directly to President Margaret Foster, who now understood that the $50 million Dignity Banking Initiative was not a philanthropic loss, but the most profitable customer acquisition channel the bank had ever engineered. The digital analytics team reported that the viral video, originally captured by Maria Santos, was still being utilized by independent corporate trainers worldwide, maintaining an active monthly viewership that kept the bank's public reputation permanently linked to its ongoing reform metrics. Dr. Williams continued to monitor the implementation of the branch-level changes with an ironclad insistence on concrete empirical results, refusing to allow the bank to slide back into comfortable, performative marketing campaigns. Her legal team, still led by the unyielding Patricia Morrison, maintained a bi-weekly auditing schedule of the bank's primary commercial underwriting departments to ensure that every single loan application submitted by minority entrepreneurs was being evaluated by a fully blinded, decentralized algorithm rather than biased regional committees. This structural intervention completely revolutionized the bank's risk assessment models, proving that minority-led startups possessed a statistically lower default rate when provided with equitable access to core operational capital and fair repayment terms. The expanding influence of the Dignity Banking Initiative soon caught the attention of international financial consortia operating within the European and Asian markets, where systemic bias often manifested in complex regulatory hurdles for foreign enterprises. Dr. Amara Williams flew directly to London inside her private corporate jet to finalize a historic expansion contract with a consortium of British technology developers who were specifically seeking a financial partner with clean corporate governance credentials. During the high-level international summit, several conservative European investment bankers questioned whether her rigorous focus on social equity would slow down the deployment of transactional liquidity in fast-moving tech acquisitions. Dr. Williams countered their skepticism by presenting a comprehensive multivariable financial model developed by Jennifer Park, which mathematically demonstrated that organizations practicing absolute transparency and inclusion generated a 22% higher return on equity over a 5-year fiscal cycle. Back in New York, the localized impact of her work was transforming the physical landscape of underserved commercial districts, where empty warehouses were rapidly being converted into state-of-the-art technological hubs and advanced manufacturing facilities funded entirely by the First National Bank Community Development Fund. Marcus Johnson's automotive repair franchise had now expanded to 4 distinct regional locations, providing highly technical mechanical training and stable living wages to dozens of local youths who had previously been excluded from the traditional economic grid. The success of Marcus's business model became so pronounced that major financial publications featured him on their front covers, explicitly citing Dr. Williams as the structural architect who turned an afternoon of public discrimination into a multi-million-dollar economic engine for the entire tri-state area. The former senior teller, Brad Thompson, found himself completely blacklisted from the entire financial services industry, unable to secure even an entry-level position at local credit unions due to the permanent, immutable nature of the viral video that continued to surface during every standard background check. As the 12-month anniversary of the Manhattan branch incident approached, a powerful group of traditionalist shareholders within First National Bank attempted to organize a quiet boardroom mutiny against President Margaret Foster, claiming her massive financial commitments to minority communities were eroding core profit margins. This conservative faction, representing approximately 14% of the bank's voting stock, filed a formal petition to suspend the Dignity Banking Initiative and reinstate the previous highly restrictive credit scoring parameters that favored historic multi-generational wealth networks. Alerted to this backroom maneuver by an anonymous source within the bank's compliance division, Dr. Amara Williams immediately held an emergency executive session with Patricia Morrison and her senior financial analysts to plan an aggressive counterstrike. Instead of engaging in a public media war, Dr. Williams quietly initiated a massive targeted market accumulation strategy, purchasing hundreds of thousands of outstanding First National voting shares through multiple anonymous institutional asset management firms over a 72-hour period. By the time the annual shareholder meeting convened inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, Dr. Williams walked into the hall not merely as a high-net-worth commercial client, but as one of the top 5 largest individual shareholders in the entire history of the financial institution. When the conservative faction stood up to present their motion to dismantle the diversity compliance framework, Dr. Williams took the primary microphone and delivered a devastating, data-driven presentation that left the insurgent investors completely speechless. She proved with absolute mathematical precision that the branches utilizing the independent bias monitoring systems had outpaced the traditional branches in pure revenue growth by a factor of 3 to 1, completely validating the commercial utility of human dignity. She then cast her massive block of newly acquired voting shares to completely defeat the conservative motion, permanently securing Margaret Foster's presidency and establishing an absolute mandate for systemic reform. The total defeat of the boardroom mutiny marked a permanent turning point in the modern history of corporate finance, causing major Wall Street rating agencies to formally upgrade First National Bank's environmental, social, and governance metrics to the highest possible tier. Dr. Amara Williams's unique ability to leverage immense economic power to enforce social justice became the central theme of a major international economic forum held in Switzerland, where she delivered an unscripted address on the absolute obsolescence of historical corporate prejudice. She explained to the gathered assembly of global central bankers that systemic discrimination was fundamentally an operational inefficiency that artificially restricted the velocity of capital and suppressed the true productive capacity of human society. Her insights were so transformative that 3 distinct Scandinavian sovereign wealth funds announced they would systematically divest from any financial institution that lacked a verified independent third-party discrimination reporting framework like the one engineered by Williams and Associates. Back in the United States, the specialized mobile application developed to report consumer profiling had now been adopted by over 2 million active banking customers across multiple corporate networks, effectively creating a decentralized real-time public watch system for civil rights compliance in retail commerce. The anonymous reporting data, filtered through this system, allowed federal regulators to identify and penalize structural bias within 48 hours of an infraction, completely bypassing the sluggish multi-year civil litigation process that historically protected wealthy corporate offenders from immediate operational consequences. 18 months after the initial confrontation, the legal precedent established by the pre-negotiated anti-discrimination clause in the Williams and Associates banking contract was officially codified into federal law under a new Comprehensive Financial Consumer Protection Act. Dr. Amara Williams stood directly behind the President of the United States inside the Oval Office as the historic legislation was signed into law, marking the permanent conclusion of an era where corporations could humiliate minority patrons with complete legal impunity. The new federal statute mandated that every commercial banking institution holding over $10 billion in total deposits must maintain a fully independent civil rights compliance division that reported directly to federal regulators rather than internal corporate counsel. Jennifer Park was officially promoted to Chief Operating Officer of Williams and Associates, tasked with overseeing the firm's global investment portfolio, which had now expanded to an astonishing $5.6 billion across 5 continents. The tech startup that had almost been destroyed by Brad Thompson's initial refusal to process the wire transfer had just went public on the New York Stock Exchange, achieving a market valuation of over $1.5 billion and cementing Dr. Williams' reputation as one of the most visionary venture capitalists of the 21st century. Maria Santos received a prestigious National Award for Digital Journalism, her historic live stream recognized by major universities as the most consequential piece of citizen-led economic documentation in the history of the modern Internet. The ultimate legacy of Dr. Amara Williams's nonviolent economic victory was permanently etched into the architectural landscape of Manhattan, when First National Bank officially renamed its flagship 47th Street branch the Williams Center for Financial Equity. The historic marble hall, where she had once been told to step aside because of her skin color, was completely renovated to serve as a high-tech incubator and educational center where young entrepreneurs from underrepresented backgrounds could access free financial training, corporate legal counsel, and direct seed capital. On the day of the grand reopening, Dr. Williams walked through the polished bronze doors, accompanied by Patricia Morrison, Marcus Johnson, and hundreds of local community leaders who had benefited directly from the $50 million fund. As she stood before the massive crowd of reporters and television cameras, she did not look back at the past with bitterness, but looked forward to the future, with the serene confidence of a leader who had proven that quiet strategic power would always triumph over loud, unreasoned prejudice. She delivered her final public remarks to the next generation of business leaders, reminding them that true power does not lie in the loud, destructive mechanisms of anger or physical retaliation, but in the silent, mathematical, and unyielding execution of economic justice. The entire banking industry had been permanently rearranged because one brilliant woman refused to accept public humiliation, turning a single moment of systemic oppression into an unstoppable, multi-billion-dollar monument to absolute human dignity.